Welcome back to Beyond Sports. I'm your host, the Fitted Nuggets fan. With me today is my co-host, Bob Taylor.
Hey.
We're here on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio. We have an exciting edition of Nuggets Knowledge coming up, the segment where we have to guess a retired Nuggets player based on their stats and achievements. We then rank them on the all-time Nuggets list and the all-time NBA list. So for today's episode, we have a very special member of the Nuggets team. All-time stats here. We're going to look at first, he was with the Nuggets for 4 seasons, originally drafted to the Nuggets back in 1980.
Okay.
His career stats with the Nuggets specifically. So this is just the 4 years he spent with the team.
Yeah.
He had 23.3 points per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, 2.7 assists, and 54% from the field shooting.
Okay.
One interesting thing to note, though, this just kind of shows you how much the NBA has developed over the years. Shot about 27% from three-point.
Oh, man.
Only with his time during the Nuggets, and then later in his career, he did get it up to around 40%. But just kind of an interesting thing, especially this individual player. So that's his stats with the Nuggets. We saw that he got drafted in 1980, first round, 11th pick overall by Denver.
Where did he come out of college?
That's a good question. I don't have that information. His career was from 1980 to 1993. He actually coached the New Jersey Nets from 2009 to 2010.
So pretty recently, okay.
Well, kind of. I mean, about 14 years ago now.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, we're starting to get old. Okay, so the highest scoring season he ever had, period, was also with Denver and in his entire NBA career. It was his 4th season in the league, 29.4 points per game.
Okay.
That's crazy stats. Crazy high. We might as well go through the remainder of the info I have here on this guy before you make your final guess, Bob. 2-time All-Star. So even though overall pretty good, career stats, his entire career was about 19.9 points per game. But still only a 2-time All-Star. More of a scoring threat than anything else. Overall career totals, 15,980 career points, 2,785 career rebounds, 1,668 assists. So kind of more of a role player guy, but definitely more on a higher scoring side. Just based on this, I'd give it a good MPJ comparison. Very similar to that, kind of more your scoring threat guy, but can also do a little bit of the other stuff you need him to. And originally from Canada, born in Germany, but Canadian national. Pretty interesting little factoid about him there. So That's everything I've got for this particular player. So I'm going to need you to make a guess based on all that information. So 4 seasons with Denver, drafted in 1980, first round. 2-time All-Star, both times in Denver, by the way.
Okay. If I'd have to throw out a guess out here, the only guy I know from Canada is Jamal Murray. Sorry to everyone else out there, but I guess I'd have to say Fat Lever.
Fat Lever is incorrect. Kiki Vandeweghe. Pretty impressive player from a career standpoint. And, I actually really like the MPJ comparison of this player. When you look at him, he really was more of a scoring threat, a floor stretcher, but kind of an interesting guy. I feel like especially when you look at his accomplishments, they don't really seem to match the same impact that he had on the game, because I know a lot of guys out there, specifically people who are very familiar with the NBA, know Kiki Vandeweghe. He's not an unknown player, to say the least. Very interesting to know that he was the most explosive on Denver. I actually wasn't very familiar with the fact that he played for Denver. I remember him more from his days in Portland when he played for them, and he had a stint with the Knicks as well. But overall, just kind of a very interesting guy, a very interesting player.
Yeah.
So I guess the conversation then becomes, where will we put him all time with the Nuggets? Only a 4-year career with the Nuggets, but 23.3 points per game, 2-time All-Star in that time period. 50% of the time he was here, he's an All-Star. 29.4 points per game, averaged in a whole season.
Only here for 4 years, though, so not.
I know, and I think that
Not
really does
crazy.
kind of hold him back on an all-time greats list. But as far as like players that can deliver at that caliber for that extended period of time,
Especially in the 80s.
especially in the 80s. I mean, we had Alex English, but I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of other
That's who I
names
honestly
floating
thought
around.
it kind of was, but once you said 4 years, I was like, there's no way.
Yeah, very, very kind of similar stats. You know, I think Alex English was a little bit better of a scorer from a career standpoint. You know,
Yeah, of
especially with the
course.
Nuggets. But you know, with Kiki, I think I would put him at 17th. You know, from all-time standpoint for the Nuggets. So let's make that clear. But it's hard to put him much lower than top 20, just because two-time All-Star. A lot of guys have made one. Murray hasn't even made one yet.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
But
Murray's never averaged,
won a championship, though.
which is a bigger deal. And I love my guy Murray, and he definitely has deserved at least one All-Star at this point in his career. And I'll be very disappointed if the league does not make him an alternate of some kind for an injured All-Star. I think at the very least he deserves that. Frankly, I was kind of insulted he wasn't in the top 10, but we saw Austin Reeves
Oh my
in the
God.
top 10
And
for the
Klay
guards.
Thompson.
And Klay Thompson, and much love and respect to Klay Thompson, obviously a legend, clear Hall of Famer, four-time champion, but
I like Austin Reeves, too, but neither
they
of
don't
them
belong in the
deserve-
All-Star game.
Yeah.
They don't deserve the nod. Murray deserves that nod. But my guy Kiki, two-time All-Star. So pretty impressive. I mean, especially when you match it up for guys like that. Aaron Gordon's never been an All-Star. MPJ's never been an All-Star. And that matters. I mean, yeah, 1980s were a different era, different league, different team. But still, like, it's an accomplishment you can't shake a stick at, essentially. And then 23.3 points per game, also higher tier, better than Murray, better than MPJ. And I think MPJ's his closest comparison, and he's got better statistics with the Nuggets and better career stats overall for his whole time period in the league.
Hopefully MPJ stays longer than Kiki did, but I think I'd have to put him at 20 solely because of the fact he was only there for 4 years.
Yeah.
He was a two-time All-Star, but there's so many other players that were here for a much longer time, and they might not have had the bigger stats, but I feel like they made a better impact, if that makes more sense.
Yeah, so when we're ranking these players, then we're going to take into consideration their impact with the organization then going forward.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's worth considering, you know, impact on the city, impact on the organization. Like we're talking about, we're NBA fans. We know the league to a certain degree, definitely
Yeah.
more than the average person. And, you know, to see Kiki play for the Nuggets was a bit of a surprise for me. You know, that wasn't something that was common knowledge. And so I can agree with that. 20th overall, you know, I would try to push him higher, you know, almost from just his career standpoint when we look at that. But if we're looking solely based on his time with the Nuggets, I just don't think he accomplished enough. Yeah, he was an all-star, but was that just because there wasn't enough talent around him and he was just getting the minutes and the ball? You know, maybe that's why he averaged 29.4 points per game. Pretty crazy, but
Yeah.
20, I mean, it's hard to find 20 people, you know, ahead of him. So I concede number 20, and I can concede to that overall ranking for him there. But now we can expand it out, talk more about his career, and look at the NBA as a whole. And with Kiki Vandeweghe, again, just kind of an interesting player, just especially with what he's been able to do in his time in the league. And from a consistency perspective, I think that's the most impressive part, is he had a long career and he remained consistent throughout that career, and then also extended it into coaching.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he didn't coach too much, and he kind of fizzled out, I guess, after the Nets. But I don't know. I think he definitely probably impacted more as a player than a coach.
Yeah. No,
least
his
he gave it a
impact
shot.
is his impact is definitely as a player. You know, I would definitely say his Portland Trailblazer days are going to be where most people know him from. You know, he had a short stint with the Knicks, short stint with the Clippers. Good to see him get developed here in Denver. You know, he's an analyst with ESPN. Obviously, that doesn't really go into NBA all-time stats and rankings, but I just think it's an interesting player.
Yeah, fun thing to talk about.
To talk about. You know, this is just one of those guys that just doesn't really get much recognition throughout his career, and it's just such a pleasure to see that somebody like that was with the Nuggets organization, somebody memorable. and him to have scored at such a high level. Like I said, it's a cool, interesting way to look at like an MPJ comparison from an all-time Nuggets perspective.
Well, and think about it. I mean, I'm guessing this guy was the first option on the team, considering he averaged a season with 29.4 points per game. But what if MPJ was the first option on the team? If we're going that comparison, could he get that same kind of points?
I think if MPJ is a first option, and we've gotten a chance to see it occasionally. I mean, it's a very rare occasion when Jokic isn't on the floor, but he has sat a couple of games, and MPJ has been looked at as the first option. I think Murray was out as well.
Yeah.
And I think that give him a whole season, and I think he's definitely averaging more. I think the biggest thing with MPJ that we've seen, and we continue to see it even as he's trying to develop his game, is just the consistency factor. And just sometimes he's just not there. His shooting's just not there, and his decision-making with those shots is also a little bit questionable as well.
Yeah. So where would you put him all time?
Oh, my guy, Kiki. Kind of like we did with last week with David Thompson. I think it's what we put him at 20th overall, right?
Yeah.
So we multiply him on the teams.
Right, 30.
30 teams, so roughly 600. I'd give him a little bit more consideration than that because he's a two-time All-Star, which is, again, a pretty unique accomplishment. A lot of times you see guys who'll get the one All-Star because everybody knows, okay, this guy can hoop, but is he really the best, one of the best guys in the league? And you just don't normally agree with that. But a two-time All-Star, okay, this dude can play. It's certified at that point. In a 13-year career, averaging 20 points per game, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
a great career.
It's a good career. It is. He's not anybody's franchise player. He's never the superstar of your team, but the dude could ball. I mean, he really could. And my 2K players know how vicious Kiki can be in 2K and the My Team mode. So overall, I'd probably put him. Man, it's tough. I'd say maybe 490.
I could agree with that.
490. I think that
we put Fareed at like 500 something, so I think we got to put.
Yeah, Fareed might have been a little high.
Yeah,
might have been a little high. It's
right.
Defense. Yeah. It's defense
and heart.
A lot of heart. You get extra bonus points for that. This has been Nuggets Knowledge with Beyond Sports. Follow me, your host, the Fitted Nuggets Fan, on Instagram at Fitted Nuggets Fan, and recognize me at a game for your chance to win free stuff. Be sure to follow us on social media at Beyond Sports 5280. If you have any suggestions for the show, please call or text 720-446-8463. Again, that number is 720-446-8463. Got an interesting special guest coming up next. Stay tuned for more Beyond Sports after this. Welcome back to Beyond Sports. I'm your host, the Fitted Nuggets Fan. I'm here today with my special guest, Grant from Sports Illustrated with the Mavericks. Grant and I are going to be talking a little bit about just some of what he's done in his career. So, Grant, why don't you tell me a little bit how you got started off? I mean, I know we know each other from back in Indiana, but, why don't you tell me a little bit about how your career got going?
Yeah, honestly, when I was it started as early as when I was in middle school. I basically just wrote for fun. And then I continued to do that until I got to college. And then I basically got an opportunity to write for the Kokomo Tribune. That's where I used to live before I moved to the Dallas area. And so they let me write a column there weekly. And then I did that through school. And then I got the opportunity with Sports Illustrated to write about the Pacers initially. But then since I'm from I spent most of my time in Dallas, I switched over to Mavericks and have basically been doing that ever since.
Oh, excellent. Sports Illustrated, obviously a huge opportunity coming from the Kokomo Tribune. I'm sure you've got to be excited about, your rise through the journalism ranks there.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely it was definitely an interesting opportunity because especially with the coronavirus situation, there was no arena access and press conferences and things like that outside of Zoom. So I wasn't really around the in-person element for the Pacers with me being in school, in a different state. And then, jumping into the Maverick stuff was interesting because it was the full experience. It's almost like a rookie year, even though I've been writing for like a while. Is pretty much what it was kind of like. Yeah.
The welcome to the NBA moment for
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Well, I'm sure it had to have been a magical time for you, especially getting started out. And now that you're a little more seasoned, what are some of the favorite things you like about what you do?
Yeah, I think a big part is probably the ability to actually gain insight from the people that are involved in the games, like in specific plays, and then like just like tell stories that are happening throughout a full season. Especially like with this season, I've been doing all the road games as well. So like you kind of continue to like follow storylines that might have been challenging had you basically like knock on like the 4-game road trip and things like that. So it's definitely been interesting from that standpoint. And because I did enough road games last year, I was able to get like what they call like the tier 1 like access for like locker room ability for pregame and postgame. So I was able to like do more content like that, where I'm able to talk to players and build relationships and do interviews that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. Like I've done a couple with like Kyrie Irving in the locker room so far this season, and with guys like that, it's definitely like something that you have to build towards for a long time, and then they'll trust you to write about them for sure.
Wow, that's incredible. Being that hands-on and that close to NBA players, I think that's a dream for everybody out there right now. And, I would ask, now that you're traveling with the team, what is that traveling schedule like? Does that wear on you after a while?
It does probably in some situations. Like, for example, when they didn't make the in-season tournament, they added Portland to the schedule, and they had just been there 8 days prior. Or no, we'll have gone 8 days later, I should say. So that's 2 matchups to the furthest NBA city from Dallas in a span of 8 days. And then, now I'm here for today's game. So that was like from Portland to Denver and then back to Dallas. And then like they've got a weird situation where it's like home, away, and then a second out of a back-to-back after that. So it's like sometimes it's just a lot in a little period of time, but I enjoy it a lot. So it's like doesn't feel really that challenging for me, but yeah, I think it's a little different when you really enjoy what you're doing for sure.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And for you, I would ask, what does a typical day look like for you on game day? What does that day start out like?
Yeah, usually I'll like try to finish things that I have that are like relevant between games. Like for example, today I'll probably finish like a story about how like the Mavericks have really thrived on the road because they're 9-4. That's like the best win percentage of any team away from their like home venue this season. And there were some like good comments about that from like Luka, Jason Kidd, and then other players as well. So I usually try to do like stories like that or finish up something that I've been working on in general. Like sometimes probably like closer to when Derek Lively returns, I did a one-on-one interview with him, but I don't really want to put it out if he's rolled out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like that sort of thing. So that's also part of it too. Is it's like on the fly. In Portland, he wasn't injured entering the game, and I fully expected like, okay, now I got everything I need, and then he's injured. It's like that's not the one I'm gonna push forward for.
Right,
so, yeah.
You got to time out your articles at the right amount of time.
Yeah, so you kind of have to pivot on the fly sometimes, and yeah, it's definitely you have to be willing to be flexible for sure.
So with you having, full level 1 press pass access, what would you say is your favorite area to go during the game that you're allowed into on your typical stadium?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I would say the pregame locker room for the actual like substance element has been helpful for me. Not everyone's going to be available because a lot of the big names, they're in the training room conveniently. Conveniently when the reporters are allowed because they warn them and they're like, oh, the media is going to come in, and then then you don't see this guy, that guy. They kind of start to trickle out. But for a lot of younger players, like Derek Lively and then Olivier Maxence-Prosper, the other rookie the Mavericks have, a lot of guys like that, and some of the like solid veteran players like that are kind of role players. Those are perfect opportunities to talk to those guys. Like for example, like Dante Exum, he's played really well over the last 6 games that they've started him. And he's usually in there, so I can talk to him. And, as he's continued to, play well, I'm able to, kind of expect to go in there and be like, all right, I can probably talk to him. And that usually helps a lot. And because if you have things that are generally relevant, that's pretty helpful regardless of how the game kind of goes. And then you can kind of add what you need afterwards. But there's a lot of hustle element to it for the post game because both teams are talking at the same time.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so like if some arenas are further away from others, like the Spurs, you're very far away from the other like two teams' rooms and locker rooms, so you have to like really kind of pick and choose your pursuits for sure.
So you got to really time that out to make sure you maximize your time.
Yeah, and then also be realistic about your expectations
right.
too. Yeah, like for example, last time I was in Denver, like at the very like the NBA in-season tournament game, which was like game 5 or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Jokic was in the locker room. I'm not gonna go up and talk to Nikola Jokic before he's about to do his workout. So things like that for sure.
Right. Well, Grant, you spending so much time with the Mavericks now, who would you say is your favorite player to talk with and interview?
Yeah, I would say probably Kyrie Irving, because he gives a lot of like detailed answers. Like he's very thoughtful in like the insight he provides, and he's been around the game for a very long time. Like this is his like 12th NBA season, and he's played with a lot of great players. So his like insight on stuff is very interesting. And then I always enjoy talking to young players too, because they're learning the NBA like on the fly, and you're able to kind of like track that journey, if you will, as they're figuring things out. So usually probably like those are the like my absolute favorite ones for sure.
Yeah, and I could definitely see the young player journey being an exciting one to be a part of, because you being so close with the sport, you really do get to share in that journey with some of these guys, especially covering the Mavs specifically. I'm sure that's an amazing element.
Yeah, definitely. Like for the example of Derek Lively, he is in a very interesting situation. Like he was 12th overall in the draft, and initially like the expectations weren't very high for what he would like produce early in his like career, like as a 19-year-old who's looking to develop his game. Like at the time of summer league, they actually thought their other rookie would be the one that would get minutes, like Omax Prosper.
I was gonna have to ask who that even was.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's the very interesting thing about it is like they're like, oh well, Derek could spend time in Frisco, like with the G League team potentially, and then you fast forward, he made strides like since the summer league in what he like worked on with the the coaching staff at the Mavs facility, and then they go on that 12-day like preseason international trip to like Abu Dhabi and Madrid, and with that, he continued to like impress even against guys like Karl Towns, Rudy Gobert, and then you're kind of tracking that journey. Like that first game, he struggled with the physicality. That was his first like real competition in sort of a NBA like true type of environment outside of that summer league, and against like now the number one like Western Conference team with two really talented big men. That in hindsight was really interesting. And then I got to talk to him after that, like in between that first and second game, and then he responded very well in the following game. So things like that are like kind of like a microcosm of like throughout like just the stretches that become like a full season that are fascinating to track how guys handle it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, expanding out to the Nuggets, what are some of your thoughts on the Nuggets so far this season? I'm not sure how closely you followed them, but how are we looking right now as a whole, and what would you say is an area of opportunity for them at this point?
Yeah, I always am impressed with the Nuggets, like the size they have on the perimeter alongside Nikola Jokic, especially like from the Mavericks perspective, because they have an undersized team. So like when you have Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. to have to account for, and you have to really like hone in on Nikola when he's just having the ball in his hands, or they're just operating in a half court. That's really tough. And then you factor in the threat that Jamal Murray provides up top. Like you sometimes have to send two defenders at him as well, and then that just puts a lot of stress overall. And then they have shooters like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He can really let it fly and shoot on the move and things like that. So there's just a lot of threats all at once that are like not your typical like ISO like you're just gonna have three like really like just superstar type of players that are just gonna pound the air out of the ball. They have like a really like cohesive like complementary style with one another, and I feel like that's rare in the NBA to do it to that extent, where you're able to establish a core and build on it and really like have all the pieces fit like seamlessly.
Excellent. Grant, so last question for you here. What would you say NBA culture is as a whole? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think honestly, a lot of like in terms of the players involved, like what's that
just
like?
Kind of whatever that means to you. So NBA culture could be anything. It's really just what kind of jumps out off the page at you.
Yeah, I think if you think about the NBA overall, like that element, I think there's just a lot that goes into it, like in terms of the lifestyle for like players and then like everyone involved in that. There's just a lot of like I guess you could say like workload for everybody, where it's like kind of interesting to see how people handle like the 3 games of 4 nights. Like there's a high production value to it compared to like other like basketball leagues around the world. Like EuroLeague, you could say, is like more like spaced out with their schedules, and there's not as much of like a focus on the high like entertainment value. It's more off of like the do whatever it takes to hone in on the details to win. So I feel like it's an interesting balance of having the best players in the world, but also like there's parts of it where it's geared towards entertainment value, and there's a lot of action packed in a short period of time. So then you're like, that culture is interesting because you have to see how people handle that throughout a 82 game season, a lot of ups and downs, injuries and things like that. So I think a lot of it boils down to like handling challenges and adversity, if you think about it, because there's a lot of like games within the game and a lot of like injuries and all that stuff that while everyone's expecting you to be at your best. So it's like definitely an interesting thing to kind of think about for even like not even just players, like coaches and things like that. There's a lot that goes into it. You have to be consistent for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure, it seems like it's a big mental side of the game too that the fans don't necessarily take into consideration or truly understand. Like you said, 3 games in a 4-day stretch, like that's intense on these guys, and to see them do it day in and day out, I mean, it's just nothing short of impressive.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like a lot of it is like some of those added challenges are interesting too, because like for the Mavericks perspective, they had like an unprecedented preseason trip too. They spent like 12 days, had 2 continents to go to.
Wow.
Yeah, like that was like the most like expansive like preseason like trip for any NBA team, I think, ever, because like no team has really done like the playing like a non-NBA team on the road and then like played in another like place like Abu Dhabi, like because that's also been like a very recent like pursuit for the NBA to like play in other cities and locations like that. So a lot of new territory in general, but overall with that, it's like that's kind of an interesting microcosm because you're looking at them handling that before a season starts. And most people would think like even if you go to like Japan or something like that or China, for your one preseason game, that's going to be taxing and challenging. But they dealt with like 12 days, so it's like that's kind of a intriguing part of it in itself. And then they didn't have multiple consecutive home games until like the start of like early December.
Wow.
Yeah, like it was
like
like
been worn down.
Yeah, a lot of like road trips, like 4-game road trips, and then like away home. So it's almost like a lot of times you hear those guys and the coaches talk, and if you're just coming back for one game, it almost feels like the home game is a road game. Like the fan support's there, but it's like the life element of stopping in that city is almost like a part of the road trip.
Yeah, it's just a quick stopover, and then you're right back to the schedule.
Yeah, you're right back on the plane for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Grant. All right, last thing for you here. We have to ask you, Mavericks versus Nuggets tonight. What's going to be your prediction as the final score?
I predict the Nuggets will probably win by double figures. I think it's going to require, with the injuries that the Mavericks have, with Kyrie Irving out, Derek Lively out, it will require some like scorching hot 3-point shooting. Teams have really been aggressive trying to get the ball out of Luka's hands, putting them in 4-on-3 situations. And the more players that kind of end up on that injury report for the Mavs, the less capable they're going to be of handling that. So unless like there's some really like just phenomenal role player performances, I feel like Denver will probably handily win this one tonight.
Well, if anyone can pull it off, it's definitely Luka Magic, that's for sure. Well, Grant, thank you so much for joining us today on Beyond Sports.
This has been our special guest spotlight with Beyond Sports. Follow me, your host, the Fitted Nuggets Fan, on Instagram at Fitted Nuggets Fan, and recognize me at a game for your chance to win free stuff. Be sure to follow us on social media at Beyond Sports 5280. If you have any suggestions for the show, please call or text 720-446-8463. Again, that number is 720-446-8463. Got an exciting star player draft coming up next. All right, welcome back to Beyond Sports. I'm Bob Taylor, and always with me, the Fitted Nuggets Fan.
Hey guys, what's up, Nuggets Nation?
All right. We just came back from an interview with Grant. What a good guy. Does some really, really good work.
Yeah, his work with Sports Illustrated has been great, and just being able to have an opportunity to talk to him a little bit about his experience with that, and even getting his insight from a Mavericks perspective on what he thinks about the Nuggets. It was a pretty special interview for us.
Yeah, and I mean, he did call that outcome too. He said a double-digit win. That's exactly what happened. So
yeah, smart guy. That
he might
Grant.
know his stuff a little bit.
Yeah. What do you got for us today, Bob?
All right, so today we're going to be doing a draft of our favorite superstars in the league that aren't on the Nuggets.
Okay, so what are you talking about here?
So we're going to highlight some of the other superstars around the league, and what we're going to kind of run with is we're going to go. You can start. We're going to draft our players. So once one player's taken, you can't choose him.
Okay. And this would be for what exactly? What kind of draft? Like
Just
any
our
random players or
our favorite superstars? Let's say
so top
superstars.
5?
Top 3, top 5. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. All right.
See how much we want to talk about each one and how much we want to get into each player. But I'll let you take it away and go first.
All right. Well, if we're talking about favorite players in the league, I mean, it's hard not to like Luka Doncic. Definitely one of the most explosive, exciting players, to say the least. And I would give him a pretty close comparison to a more scoring-centric Jokic. Really love to see that. Obviously, everyone knows Jokic and Doncic are good friends right now. And
absolutely.
Hopefully one day Luka will suit up for the Nuggets. But until that day comes, he definitely has my vote as one of the top players in the league right now and one of my personal favorites.
I'll pitch in to help get Luka over here. I don't know how we'd do it, but I don't
just set up a GoFundMe for Denver, right?
Yeah,
I think that's what we need to do. Some loyal fan out there can do that. We all donate $1. I mean, that's at least a conversation starter.
We should have did that with Bruce Brown. We could have afforded it.
We had a better shot with Bruce Brown, I think, than Luka. Knowing how Mark Cuban feels, even though he doesn't own the team, he's still involved in that.
Yeah, but I mean, definitely Luka. He's an amazing player. He's an extremely exciting player. Dallas is 6th in the West, and Kyrie's missed 16 games. I mean, that's kind of a lot. Like, that's pretty much a third of their season.
Yeah, it's a competitive year this year for sure, and the Mavericks are showing that they're here to compete, and we'll see if they can figure it out. I feel like they're really not gaining a lot of traction from last year. Obviously, Luka is unbelievable. Kyrie's unbelievable, but for some reason, it's just not mapping out to being a top-tier team. I really feel like those two guys together should be top 3, no questions asked.
There's only one ball.
We just haven't seen it. Yeah, and it's ball dominance for sure. And it'll just be interesting how they try to figure out that team as they continue. I'm glad they're committed to it, and we're not seeing drastic 6 months in, okay, let's trade everybody type mentality. I like that they're giving it some time to really, truly figure out how to make this team work together.
Yeah, and so I'm just going to jump into my next one. I'll go with my first pick. I would say Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, I'm from Indianapolis, so I do love the Pacers. Seeing Halliburton play as well as he has, taking the jump that I thought he was going to, is extremely exciting, not to mention – I mean, they just dismantled the Bucks the other day, and they've beat them 4 times out of the 5 games that they've played. Like, they're a fun team to watch, and he's a big part. I mean, he leads the league in assists right now. And
yeah. Tyrese, it's hard not to like Tyrese. He's a pretty amazing guy overall, especially just being able to see him share the ball. And what the Pacers are doing right now is pretty similar to what we saw the Nuggets do, and it's really have that main selfless ball distributor who can score and stretch the floor and get the ball to the guys who are open when people are trying to double team him. And we're really seeing Tyrese Halliburton feel comfortable in that role. The rest of the team around him are starting to feel comfortable in that role. And that's what I've liked the most, because we see guys like Miles Turner start to come alive a little bit more. Obviously, Benedict Matherin's coming alive a little bit more, but it's not uncommon to see almost 8 guys in double digits on that team. And that is a team that is going to win games and go far and go the distance when it comes down to it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, their offensive rating is number 1 in the league by far. It's 123.4 right now. I mean, he's had 147 assists and only 24 turnovers in the last 10 games. Like,
that's pretty impressive.
And crazy efficiency that we haven't seen in a very long time. And he got 2 games in a row with 20 assists back-to-back.
Yeah,
and that was a really, really cool stretch.
You love to see it, and what the Pacers are doing is truly special. And I'm going to segue into my second pick now.
All right.
I'd probably have to say Giannis for me. He's just a really exciting player, really another one of those modern big men who are really figuring it out, winning at a high level, scoring at a high level,
Really
producing
likes
at
the
a high
game ball.
level, really likes the game ball. Some of those actions that he's had has made me a little more disappointed. I can understand where
It's
he's
all
coming
right.
from, but at the same time, that's a little childish. Everyone's adults. No one's trying to take the ball away from you, and him making such a big deal about it is kind of what escalated the whole situation in the first place.
Yeah, but I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt to just let him slide.
I think so too. Giannis
agree. It's a little-
at a core is a nice person.
Yeah.
I think he means well, and maybe he was just a little bit emotional, heat of the moment. Hard to really tell overall, but Giannis definitely my guy. I mean, he already brought a championship to the Bucks organization that
Small
hasn't had one
market.
in a long time. Small market team, very similar rise to ascension like Nikola Jokic. Two-time MVP, same thing as Jokic. Very next season gets the finals. So I'd love to see Jokic get number 2 in a row. I think that's really going to help separate him on the
Absolutely.
all-time great list. May even win MVP this year. We'll see. But overall, Giannis definitely has to be number 2 on my list. Can't have it without him.
Yeah, and I mean the Bucks are second in the East right now too. They're 25-10, and they're good. Wow, they've lost 4 times to the Pacers out of their 10 losses.
The Pacers are
That's
special.
crazy.
And, sometimes those teams just figure another team out. Obviously the Thunder are number 1 in the West, but I think the Thunder kind of have our number a little bit, and it's something that we're going to have to really make some adjustments to with the Nuggets. But
Yeah.
similar situation in my opinion. So who would your number 2 be then?
I'm gonna kind of go. It's not similar to Tyrese, but they were on the same team. De'Aaron Fox out on the Kings. I mean, just an incredible clutch player, shooting a career high in 3-point percentage right now, leading the Kings to I think they're 5th in the West. And I mean they're not as good as they were last year, but I think they're as good as they should have been last year, if that makes sense. With Harrison Barnes kind of coming back and playing like he normally does, frankly, they're kind of settled back down from that 2-3 seed to that 5-6 seed area.
Yeah, and I think that's where the Kings belong at the moment. I think that's
At
how
the
they
moment,
really
yeah.
finished the year last year, even though they did finish strong, obviously a high-placed seed.
Yeah.
They lost the Warriors, who just weren't, in my opinion, all that great last year.
No.
I don't think that they should have gotten out of the first round with how they were built. I think the Kings were capable of taking them out, and seeing the Warriors beat the Kings was pretty sad overall for me, and it just showed that they just weren't ready to
Yeah.
take that next step. But, De'Aaron Fox, obviously he's been a force since he came into the league, and he's one of those guys who gets his flowers, he gets his recognition from time to time, but still goes pretty underrated.
Only Kings fans think that he doesn't get his recognition. We're recognizing him right now, okay? We're doing this right now. Anyways.
Yeah, but De'Aaron Fox on your list, I can respect that. For my number 3, I think I would have to go with Anthony Edwards. And if we want to
Okay.
talk about overall disrespect, I think Anthony Edwards just really isn't getting much recognition around the league at the moment. As much as they deserve for being a number 1 seed, I think I would expect to see Karl Anthony Towns getting shouts out a little bit more often, even Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards. But Anthony Edwards is a dog who plays with physical dominance, and it's really fun to watch him play. And seeing the Timberwolves take a number 1 seed, especially when that really wasn't anything anyone expected going into this year. I mean, they're
Yeah.
always a tough team, but to make such a jump and to maintain that number 1 seed, I think it's hard to count Anthony Edwards out.
Yeah, I mean, they've only lost 9 games out of 34, so they're doing really well this year, and they definitely figured out their whole team, especially with Mike Conley getting a full offseason. I know we kind of mentioned this last week because we did the player spotlight on him, but yeah, just it's kind of all coming together for the Wolves right now, and it's pretty cool to see, honestly.
Yeah, definitely going to be a tough matchup for the Nuggets if it ends up that way. I'm hoping we see them about round 2 if we need to, a little bit more gassed, and we can take them down. I think the Timberwolves pose a threat, but I think the Nuggets are posed to overpower them.
And to kind of segue into my third pick, SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, he's speaking of teams coming together. OKC looks like they don't need to trade for anybody. They look like they just need to keep it going. They look good.
Yeah.
I don't want to play them in the playoffs at all.
The Thunder are a really crazy team because they have all those picks banked on top of already having developed such a successful organization and team at this point. So hopefully we can see them translate that to playoff success. I think that's going to be the biggest factor, is going to come down to if they can handle pressure. One thing that scares me as a Nuggets fan was in that first loss that we took, Shea took the ball like coast to coast and scored in clutch and iced it. And that is a clutch moment. That is similar to a playoff situation, if you will. And it's tough. But then conversely to that, we see Jokic pull up from almost the logo and hit a much-needed game-winning
39 feet.
Which was unbelievable. I mean, to say the least.
Was so great.
So a battle between these two guys would be really incredible. And I personally don't want to see the Thunder either. But at the end of the day, they're
I would
competitors.
love to watch it as basketball. I would hate my team to have to play them.
Yes, I can agree with that. So I guess that'll finish off our list then.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, this has been the Superstar Draft with Beyond Sports. Be sure to follow us on social media at Beyond Sports 5280. If you have any suggestions for the show, please call or text 720-446-8463. Again, that number is 720-446-8463. That's all for us this week, so be sure to tune in next Monday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time for another great episode of Beyond Sports.